Back in 2017, I transferred colleges and had to move out of state. I didn't know anyone in the area and couldn't afford to live alone, so I found a guy on a student housing forum looking to fill a second bedroom in his apartment. His name was Noah. He was already a junior at the school I was transferring into. We messaged for a few days and he seemed normal. Quiet, a bit reserved, but polite. Rent was cheap, the place was close to campus, and he even offered to help me move in. At first, everything seemed fine. The apartment was basic, but clean. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, small living room, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Noah didn't talk much, but he wasn't rude. We mostly kept to ourselves. He had a weird sleep schedule, always up late and asleep during the day. But I figured he was just a night owl, or maybe worked nights. I didn't ask. Then small things started bothering me, like how he always kept his door closed and locked, even when he wasn't home, or how he would leave post-it notes around the kitchen with random phrases like, "Do not open," or "Stay quiet," written on them. He'd remove them before I could ask what they meant. One night, about 2 weeks after I moved in, I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of someone whispering. I thought maybe Noah was on the phone, so I got up to get some water. As I passed his room, I realized the whispering wasn't coming from his room. It was coming from the living room. When I turned the corner, the lights were off. But Noah was just sitting on the couch in the dark, not moving, not talking, just staring straight ahead. I froze for a second, whispered his name, and he slowly turned toward me, but didn't say anything, just stared. Then, after a few seconds, he stood up and walked past me back to his room, closed the door, locked it. I barely slept after that. I tried to rationalize it the next day. Maybe he was sleepwalking, maybe he was just zoning out. But after that, I started paying more attention. He never seemed to leave the apartment for long. When he did, he wouldn't tell me where he was going. He never brought friends over. I wasn't even sure if he had any. I didn't see him do laundry once in the first month. Then one night, I accidentally walked in on something that I still don't fully understand. I was getting ready to take a shower, and I noticed the bathroom door was cracked open. The light was on. I pushed it open slowly, thinking maybe Noah had left it on. He was standing in front of the mirror, fully dressed, just staring at his own reflection, not moving. The water was running in the sink, and there were red marks on the edge of the porcelain, like he'd been gripping it tightly. When he saw me in the mirror, he turned the sink off, gave me this hollow half-smile and said, "Sorry, just thinking." Then he walked out and closed the door behind him. Things got worse after that. I started finding my bedroom door unlocked in the mornings. I always locked it before bed. I'm paranoid like that. But I'd wake up and it would be cracked open, just slightly. I asked Noah if he'd been in my room. He denied it with a straight face. Said maybe I forgot to lock it. But I knew I didn't. One morning I found a piece of paper on my desk that said just one thing. "You need to go." It wasn't in my handwriting. I asked Noah again. He just looked at me for a long time and said, "You should take advice when it's given." That night I slept with a chair jammed under my doorknob. A few days later, I came home to find Noah's bedroom door wide open. He wasn't home, and I know I shouldn't have gone in, but at that point, I needed answers. His room was completely bare. No posters, no books, no clutter. Just a bed, a desk, and a stack of journals in the closet. Dozens of them, all black, all identical. I opened one. Every single page was filled with tiny, cramped handwriting, repeated phrases like, "They don't know I see them. Don't let them speak to you. It's not him. It looks like him. But it's not him." Some of the pages had drawings, faces scratched out, dark staircases, what looked like eyes with slashes through them. I put the journal back and left the room. An hour later, Noah came home. He didn't say anything, but I knew he knew I'd been in there. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. I moved out the next day while Noah was gone, I never heard from him again. I blocked his number, changed my email, everything. Months later, I ran into someone from campus who recognized my name. She asked if I had really lived with Noah. I asked her what she meant. She told me he'd been in the mental health system since high school, that he'd been pulled from dorm housing his freshman year after allegedly threatening another student, but that nothing was ever proven. The university didn't publicize it. They just made it so he could only live off campus. To this day, I don't know if he was dangerous or just deeply unwell, but sometimes I think about that note on my desk. You need to go. And I wonder if it was a threat or a warning. Back in 2021, I was desperate for a cheap place to live after a rough breakup. Rent prices had jumped in my city, and I didn't have the money or energy to go apartment hunting for long. I ended up finding a Craigslist listing for a room in a 2-bedroom house not far from my job. The guy renting it out was named Eric. He was in his early 30s, worked nights at some data center, and seemed chill. The house itself was older, but in decent shape. The neighborhood was quiet, and the rent was way below market. He said he just needed help covering the mortgage. No deposit, month to month. I should have known that was a red flag. I moved in the next week. At first, Eric was polite but distant. We only crossed paths a few times during the first 2 weeks, since he worked nights and I worked during the day. But I started noticing weird habits. For one, Eric's bedroom door was always locked. That's fine, privacy, whatever. But it was the way he kept it locked even while he was home that threw me off. I'd hear him come in around 2 or 3 a.m., and his door would shut and lock immediately. No lights on in the hallway, no TV, no sounds, just the door shutting, and silence. Then I noticed something else. One night, I passed his room on the way to the kitchen and caught a glimpse through the bottom of his door. His lights were off, but there was a weird red glow pulsing underneath. Not steady like a lamp or TV, almost like a low strobe. I paused for a second but didn't knock. I figured maybe it was some sort of meditation thing or weird gaming setup. Either way, I let it go. A few nights later, I woke up around 4 a.m. to use the bathroom. On the way back, I heard faint knocking. It was repetitive, tap, 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 followed by a pause, then again. I thought maybe Eric had locked himself out or was tapping something in his room, but when I leaned in closer, I realized it was coming from inside his room, like someone was knocking from within the room, at the inside of the door. I stood there for a few seconds, listening. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. I went back to my room and locked the door. A week or so later, I had a day off work and decided to do laundry. The washer and dryer were in the basement, which I hadn't really explored since moving in. The place always felt cold and musty, and the overhead bulb flickered like a horror movie cliché. As I was down there sorting clothes, I noticed something strange tucked behind a storage shelf, a small metal lockbox. I don't know what possessed me to look, but it wasn't locked. Inside were some really weird things. A bundle of tightly wound string soaked in what looked like Wax 3 black and white photographs, all extremely faded. 2 showed old buildings, and one was of a man standing in front of a brick wall, a small voice recorder with no batteries, and a notebook filled with what looked like journal entries. Most of the pages were blank, but a few had writing. The entries were unsettling. One read, "She came again last night. Knocked from inside the closet. I didn't answer. I don't think I can open it again." Another said, "If I fall asleep with the lights off, she talks to me. Not with words, just inside." I closed the notebook and put everything back exactly how I found it. I didn't ask Eric about it. I didn't want to know. A few days later, things peaked. I came home from work around 6 p.m., and the house felt wrong the moment I walked in. The air was heavier, still, like the house was holding its breath. Eric's door was open, It was the first time I'd ever seen into his room. The lights were off, and it was hard to see much. But what stood out immediately was his closet door. It had a sliding bolt lock on the outside. I stood there, frozen. Why would someone need to lock a closet from the outside? Before I could move, Eric stepped out of the bathroom. His face was pale, almost sickly. He saw me standing in front of his room and stopped cold. We stared at each other for maybe 2 seconds before he said, calmly, "Don't ever go in there again." That was it. No yelling, no explanation. Just that. I didn't say anything. I grabbed my keys, left the house, and went to stay with a friend that night. The next day, I came back to grab my things. Eric wasn't home. I packed everything in 20 minutes and was about to leave when I noticed something taped to my door. A sticky note. One word, written in red pen, quiet. I haven't spoken to Eric since. He stopped posting on Craigslist. His house listing disappeared a few weeks later. I still think about that lock on the closet, and sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I swear I can hear faint knocking,